For as long as video games have characters, there will always be characters to hate. For whatever reason, be it their personality, their actions, role in gameplay, or whatever, they manage to elicit nothing but bad feelings from a player. Everyone has characters they hate, and I am no exception. So let's go over the biggest pains in my posterior as a passionate player of pixels. These are my top 10 most hated video game characters. I've talked about my love for Glory of Heracles in the past, but one of the things I didn't really go into that much detail about was the writing. Even though the plot is fairly standard JRPG fanfare, with amnesia being only slightly less common than the start button, the dialogue makes up for it in spades with plenty of witty banter and clever references. So it makes it all the more disappointing that the game's villain, General Agon, is just so, well, bland. Agon is a general in the army of Trantia who is basically the source of all your problems in this game. He's an immortal on account of possessing a third of the soul of the Titan Oceanus, and he wishes to return the soul to the body of the old god so he can exact revenge on Olympus for their ancient betrayal. When that plan goes belly up on account of Axios and Arnos being total bros, he sacrifices himself to the monster-making machine known as the Dikrasis to revive Typhon, which is, as anyone who knows their Greek mythology can attest, the biggest and baddest beast in the business. And what is Agon's reasoning for this course of action? Basically, he's full of anger and hatred and a bunch of other negative emotions, and he doesn't know what to do with it but give in to his supposed fate. It's a shame because every other character gets so much more development and personality, and Agon just ends up being a poor man's version of Garland. It really makes me wonder how much of this game's plot could have been shaved off if Agon got himself a decent therapist. GoldenEye 007 has cemented itself as a landmark in both licensed games and first-person shooters. It sits third on the all-time sales list for the N64, and its multiplayer laid the groundwork for some of the most successful games in history centered around pointing a gun at somebody and pressing fire. The thing is, I never actually played the original N64 release because I didn't get into gaming proper until the next generation of consoles. I have, however, played the remake on the Wii. So that means the obvious candidate of Oddjob is out because the Wii version fixes his height, basically removing what made him so annoying in the late 90s. Natalya, on the other hand, was not so fortunate. On a list of things I really don't want to do in video games, escort missions rank just below throwing my steel case copy of Smash Bros. Ultimate in a toilet. They've always been one of the most unpopular level tropes on account of having to protect an AI character that typically has no concept of self-preservation. Natalya in the original GoldenEye 007 is a classic case of this problem. But as I said, I'm looking at the Wii version. I don't know if the Wii game's version of the Defend Natalya mission is as bad as the originals, but I do know this. At least on the N64 she couldn't talk. For the love of Desmond Llewellyn and everything else that is holy, will you please shut up? I'm a huge fan of the GoldenEye film, so the fact that one of the most badass Bond girls of all time has gotten the short end of the stick twice really burns me. Everyone that starts the Modern Warfare trilogy probably begins with different hopes and expectations when they first get going. But by the end, we are unified in a common goal, and that goal is to put Vladimir Makarov in the ground. Even though Makarov doesn't become the primary antagonist until Modern Warfare 3, basically every bad thing that happens in this trilogy is in some way his doing. Let me put it to you like this. This dude fired off a nuclear missile that killed 30,000 US Marines, and that isn't even the atrocity he's remembered for. No, that distinction goes to No Russian, the infamous airport massacre to kickstart World War III that got Modern Warfare 2 in the news for all the wrong reasons. So by the time you finally get to the end of the third game, having lost plenty of your allies along the way, all you want to do is kill Makarov as violently as possible. So how does he die? By hanging. Yes, you heard that right. He doesn't even die in a good way. In a game series all about putting bullets into bad guys, the biggest bad guy bites it without taking a single bullet to the brain. Now how would I have chosen to finish Makarov off? Probably something like this. Ah, yes, much better. So far in this list, we've gone from a major villain to a useless ally and back to a major villain. I say we keep this pattern going with another useless ally and my least favorite rival in the Pokemon series, How. There are a lot of things that make the 7th generation of Pokemon really not one of my favorites, but the worst by far is just how annoying How can be. Basically all he wants to do is eat Malasada and become a kahuna like his grandfather. That's it. He doesn't grow as a character at all, which is doubly irritating when you consider just how much screen time he takes up. At least until the game's climax, where he's essentially replaced by Gladion, further adding to his general aura of inconsequentiality. Not only that, he poses no challenge in battle at any point in the game. Or at least he didn't for me, and I played the whole game with the EXP shirt off, so I'm guessing he wasn't a challenge for you either. This might be because he's one of the only rivals in the franchise dumb enough to take the starter with a type disadvantage to yours despite the other option being available. I mean, Hop does this too, but he at least has just enough character development to avoid a spot on this list.
Consider yourself lucky, Mr. Carbon Copy. You got off easy.
But what really bugs me about him is just how cheery he is all the time. This might make me sound like a curmudgeon, but think about it. All of the other rivals, even the other friendly ones, treat their losses to you as a big deal. Even if they never pose a challenge to you in gameplay, it still feels like they're growing as trainers throughout the story, and it makes you happy to either put them in their place in the case of Blue and Silver, or assist them in their development in the case of basically every rival since. With How, you never get that satisfaction because he never gets upset after losing, so he ends up feeling less like a challenge to overcome and more like a nuisance to swat aside every few hours. Ultimately, How just ends up feeling pointless, and if you took him out of the game completely, I don't think you would lose anything. Actually, now I think about it, if you removed How and gave all his screen time to the infinitely more interesting Gladion, maybe Generation 7 wouldn't feel like as much of a chore. And I know I gave Hop a pass, but this lazy crap will not fly again. Get your act together, Game Freak. I expect better from you. The Legend of Zelda as a whole is a franchise with very few flaws. But one flaw it definitely does have is its abundance of annoying NPCs, to the point where I actually contemplated making this list all about Zelda characters. While I ended up deciding against that, it was very tempting considering the franchise boasts the likes of Navi, Kapora Gabora, Tingle, and Fi. Or is it Fi? I don't know and I don't really care. But as annoying as these characters are, at least they're trying to help you. And what's worse than an annoying character trying to help you? How about an annoying character that wants you to help him? Case in point, Maggies Father from Wind Waker. I know that this isn't the popular pick when talking about despised Zelda characters, but holy Hylia, how I hate this hopeless, harassing hobo. This guy starts the game as the poorest person on Windfall Island, and every time you get in his line of sight, he will make a beeline towards you. If he gets close enough, he will beg you to save his daughter Maggie, who has been kidnapped by the Helmrock King just like Link's sister Aryll. But once you finally get Maggie safely back to Windfall, he becomes even worse! He sells all the skull necklaces that Maggie brought back with her, becoming the richest man on the island. But rather than be grateful, he instead becomes a snobby jerk, even referring to Link as an urchin despite the fact that he's responsible for all the good breaks that finally went his way. Maggie and her father are part of an overarching narrative about how the rich and poor swap places on Windfall Island over the course of the game. But while Mila and her dad end up as likable characters by the end, Maggie's father ends up going from bad to worse and there's nothing you can do about it.
Also, his daughter is a moron. I'll leave it at that.
So there I was, playing Super Mario Galaxy 2 for the first time. I was making my way through Fluffy Bluff Galaxy when I came across Captain Toad, who told me he was challenged to a race by a monkey wearing sunglasses, and immediately my hype thrusters kicked into overdrive. Was the game telling me what I think it was telling me? Was I about to run into Funky Kong in a Mario game? Nope. Instead, all I got was the number 5 character on this list, that stupid Chimp. Even putting my own personal disappointment aside, the Chimp is a character I hated from the first time I saw him. He will pop up at various points throughout the game and challenge you to beat his scores at various minigames in exchange for stars. There are 2 problems with this. First, none of his minigames are fun, and most of them have very little margin for error. Second, every time you lose a minigame, you also lose a life. That is the kind of thing we pseudo-intellectuals classify as 5 different flavors of stupid. What reason does Mario have to lose a life just because he lost at a minigame? And if those are the stakes, then why doesn't the chimp die every time I finally beat one of his scores? Top it all off with the fact that he openly admits to enjoying your frustration, and all I want to do is shoot him in the face with starbits until the inevitable heat death of his universe, my universe, and every universe.
I hate monkeys.
There is not a single character in the history of video games that makes my skin crawl more than Devorah. I don't know who at NetherRealm had the idea to take the carnage associated with Mortal Kombat and apply it to an insect-based character, but whoever it was, they clearly have no love for me, and I hope the drive-thru always gets their order wrong. I like to think that I have a fairly strong stomach, and I find most of the gore in Mortal Kombat is actually fairly manageable. But every time this walking basket of bugs shows up, I have the sudden urge to rendezvous with my lunch. She gets my vote for the most disgusting character in gaming history, and her fatalities are the most nauseating things I've ever had the displeasure of witnessing. Couple all of this with how she's always serving the biggest bad guy in the room at any given time, and she once tried to destroy the beautiful face of my spirit animal Johnny Cage, and you get a character that doesn't have a single redeeming quality.
This might be the shortest segment in the history of this channel, but I don't really want to dwell on Devorah any longer than I have to. Can you really blame me? I think for all our sakes, let's just move on.
Most of the characters on this list so far have been characters that you probably haven't seen on too many videos about this topic. But number 3 is such a staple of hated video game character countdowns that you'll know who it is just by seeing one clip.
You gotta be shitting me! You can almost set your watch by this guy!
Yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise. Jasper Bat Jr. has become the poster child for hated game characters, and it's a title he very much deserves. As the top-ranked assassin and the main antagonist of No More Heroes 2, this guy was being built up for the entire game right from the moment his henchman tossed Bishop's head through Travis's window. So when you finally come face to face with this guy only to discover he's a buck-toothed little twerp with a voice like a cheese grater on a blackboard, there's no other way to feel but unsatisfied. He then explains that his reason for killing Bishop was because Travis murdered his father along with his 2 brothers, which if you played the first game, you might recall from the assassination missions between the actual levels. That's right, the entire plot of this game originated from a few optional missions in No More Heroes 1 that you probably did once and then forgot about. He then tricks you into thinking that he has also killed every ally you have left in the game, and by this point I just want to get this letdown over with by driving my beam katana straight through his skull. On that subject of being a letdown, there is a theory that everything surrounding this character was made unsatisfying on purpose in order to be a message on how revenge is never truly worth it in the end. However, I don't buy that because I don't think that even a madman like Suda51 would willingly create one of the worst final boss battles of all time just to make a point. This battle has 3 phases, and each one contributes its own scoop of crap to make this turd Sunday. The first form is a cakewalk, right up until the point where Jasper's health stops depleting until you intentionally lose a power struggle, which at no point in either game so far is something you would even consider doing. But none of this matches up with the nonsense present in his second form, where the fight becomes nothing short of cheap. Jasper will begin teleporting around the arena in random directions, and his combos will become too fast to dodge. He also now has the potential to one-shot you if you happen to get punched in the direction of a window. As for his third and final form, not only is it just about the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but because you have to get up close to even damage him, the camera becomes your worst enemy since it'll be so zoomed in on you, you'll have no idea what attacks are coming your way until they hit you square in the face. And when it's finally all over and you get to kill Jasper, he dies with a massive grin, no screams of agony, and not a single drop of blood. Sheesh, and I thought Makarov was bad. This fight is so awful, not even the amazing Flying Irishman himself can save it. Alright, that's not entirely true. Henry might have been able to save this fight, but he made a business decision to not get involved.
It's not happening, brother. I can't be associated with that travesty.
I don't blame you one bit, Henry.
Everything surrounding Jasper Bat Jr. is garbage, and even if that was done on purpose, the end result leaves you unsatisfied with the game as a whole rather than with Travis's quest for vengeance. Let me put it to you another way. Even though it's objectively the better of the 2 games, I've only played through Desperate Struggle all the way through once, compared to the half dozen times with its predecessor, and I put the blame for that squarely at the feet of Jasper. Even though it has had its ups and downs, I still consider myself a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog games. But even though I will always have a special spot in my heart for the Blue Blur, it doesn't change the fact that, like Zelda, Sonic ran the risk of getting a whole list to itself on this topic. It takes a truly detestable character to beat out the likes of Big, Charmy, Chip, Omochao, and yet Princess Elise manages to do just that.
I don't care what happens to the world.
Shut up, bitch! Oh my god!
Choosing between Jasper Bat Jr. and Princess Elise for the runner-up spot was not an easy choice, but what ultimately landed Jasper at only number 3 was the fact that you only have to deal with him at the very end of the game. On the flip side, Princess Elise is a problem that persists straight from the start, making an already terrible game even worse. Let's start off with the fact that she manages to cram half a dozen Mario games worth of princess kidnappings in one single title. There are literally cutscenes in this game where Sonic leaves her side for 2 seconds only to turn around to see that Eggman has snatched her up yet again. This wouldn't be so bad if Elise was even a remotely interesting character, but the best way I could describe her is as a plank of wood that, despite being royalty, could only splurge for half of a spray tan. The reason behind her blandness and lack of any real human emotion is that if she was ever to cry, an ancient power inside of her would be released and cause Armageddon.
Now, I don't know about you, but hedging my bets on a teenage girl to never cry in order to preserve all of existence is not really what I would classify as a smart plan.
This is evidenced when Mephiles manages to off Sonic courtesy of a laser to the back, which causes Elise to lose it and release Iblis. But because he's the main character, Sonic's not allowed to stay dead. So after what might be my least favorite level in the entire game, and remember this is Sonic 06, so that's saying quite a lot, Elise brings Sonic back to life through the power of the Chaos Emeralds and some really uncomfortable intimacy. And as I showed at the beginning, when given the chance to wipe Solaris from existence, she doesn't want to go through with it because it would mean losing Sonic. Thankfully, she ends up blowing the flame out, thereby erasing all of the game's events from history. You know you hate a character when your favorite thing that they do is completely wipe themselves and their story from the series canon. But now the question has to be asked, who could possibly be worse than Elise? My most hated character is one that I have never seen on another list about hated characters. Maybe it's because he's only found in a DLC pack, or maybe it's just that this particular brand of nastiness just really hits home with me in a way that it doesn't with others. I don't know if I'm alone in my disdain for this individual, but I seriously doubt it. Number 1 is a person with no redeeming qualities, who from the moment you meet him, you can't wait to see him die. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Zen from Saints Row the Third.
Who is this extra and why is she talking to me?
Oh, Mr. Zhen, I'm playing Quilana.
Really? I thought we were getting a name for Quilana.
Oh my lord, I hate this guy. Jasper and Elise are historically bad characters, but Andy Zen had the top spot in this list locked up from the word go. I have never encountered a character in any video game that I wish to death upon as swiftly and viciously as I have with this guy. In the Gangsters in Space DLC, Zen is introduced as the director for the latest installment in the titular franchise. He wastes no time in sucking up to the player character who has been cast in the lead role, while simultaneously talking down to and insulting the co-star Jenny Jarvis, simply because she isn't as famous as the boss despite being much better at actually acting. As someone with a video production degree, this kind of brown-nosing to stars and belittling of everyone else is all too familiar, only made worse by the fact that Zen's voice is literally the same as Jasper's except accentuated with a freaking megaphone! Cut! As the DLC progresses, Zen makes you hate him more and more as he not only berates Jenny while ignoring the boss's mistakes, he shows absolutely no regard for his actors' safety and puts them in serious danger several times without warning just to make the movie more exciting. This culminates in the final mission, where it's revealed that the enemy ships you've been blowing up are not piloted via remote controls, but by unnamed extras. Oh yeah, you heard me correctly. This guy is fully willing to kill off his own cast and crew just to make his movie more exciting. But after endangering the boss and Jenny one last time by making them perform a stunt in their spaceship while their controls are going haywire, all the while still verbally abusing Jenny, she finally snaps. In a fit of rage, Jenny flies the ship directly into Zen and impales him on its nose, finally killing him off. But if you ask me, Zen got off easy, because given the history of the boss and subsequently the player, there could have been a way more gruesome death awaiting him if I ever got my hands on him first.
You hear me talking, hillbilly boy? I ain't through with you by a damn sight. I'ma get medieval on your ass.
If I had my choice on how to dispose of Andy Zen, it would probably include a baseball bat to the groin, an Academy Award to the skull, and some sort of suppository involving a boom mic. If you don't know what that last one is, I'll let you look it up for yourself. Apologies in advance. That is all.